With rising interest rates, market uncertainty, real estate uncertainty,
All-time high in the median price of those homes, $419,000. Real estate's a mess.
is it too late to get started in midterm rentals in 2024? I'm also going to give you 3 proven strategies that can help you build your midterm rental business, all for free. We're going to dive into this today, right now. One of the things that I'm seeing right now, which allows me to really notice how the midterm rental market is continuing to grow, is that the short-term rental space is continuing to be cracked down upon by certain cities all across the US. In fact, multiple cities that I'm even nearby, like Modesto, have cracked down and not allowed people to short-term rent anymore.
It doesn't feel like an appropriate use to have a non-owner occupied Airbnb that's constantly turning over in a neighborhood that's full of kids. You really don't know what to expect.
So what is that actually driving people to do? It's pushing people to list their properties for 30 days more at a time because we know that interest rates are higher. Investors who purchase properties are looking to get more returns, and they're not able to do that with traditional long-term rentals. So they've opted to go into short-term rentals. And since those are regulated, it's really pushing a lot of operators into the midterm rental space. Otherwise, they would have never been there again if these regulations weren't coming so hard and so quick in 2024. I've actually been personally affected by these regulations, and I can tell you that it's extremely difficult to navigate, especially if you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a property going. And I can tell you now that if you don't pivot into these specific spaces, you could be losing money on a regular basis, which I'm watching people do. And I'm telling you, it freaking sucks to have conversation with people where they're about to lose their property because they're not able to short-term rent it, and they haven't actually found out the specific ways to make money with their midterm rentals, and they're just doing it the old-fashioned way by listing on Airbnb and hoping that somebody books. With more people working remotely, that means that there's digital nomads all over the place. In fact, I recently just read a report that there was over 30 million digital nomads across the entire US. Not only that, but if you pair that with temporary housing, and that is every 88 seconds somebody loses their home due to a fire or some kind of flood, or we have this crazy weather, climate change that's happening all across the US. People are losing their properties on a consistent and regular basis. In fact, every summer I see this happen here in California. We have wildfires all over the place. One of the other things that I'm noticing a lot right now too is corporate relocations. I'm seeing a ton of travelers that are coming from other states, other cities, to certain markets all across the US because their companies are relocating to certain areas. And I think that's pretty cool. And if you're able to offer flexible housing specifically for those folks, that puts you in a position to win a lot more than anybody else specifically in the space, especially if your place is furnished. There are so many corporate entities that are using midterm rentals to house their folks that are working on assignment, construction workers, things of that nature. And I'm seeing that more and more these days, especially if you start to be intentional about who you're going after and you talk to these companies, you will find out that there's a ton of opportunities right now. In fact, I have a ton of students that are actually making $10, $15, or $20,000 a month by literally just connecting with Amazon companies, World Series of Poker. I recently had a student that landed a massive contract with Rivian. They make the electric cars that are competing with Tesla. And that's a freaking amazing thing to do. If you are an individual operator that has multiple different homes and you're able to connect with other people across the US or even in your own market and help these corporations or companies have qualified housing for these specific folks, that doesn't necessarily mean I need to own the property. That just means I need to have a network to connect with these folks that allows these companies to see that, and now I can attract them with a network that I've created in my own market. So we're actually going to dive into that. That's going to be my first discussion with you guys today. All right, let's dive into 3 ways you can actually find midterm rental possibilities or opportunities in this day and age in 2024. One of the best ways that I've noticed over the years, in fact, this is exactly what I did, is I started to network with individual real estate agents and or investors in my market. I can't tell you how important this was for me for my growth. In fact, I wanted to become the midterm rental and short-term rental. Did I just say rectal? Short-term rectal? Okay, I wanted to be the midterm and short-term rental expert in my market. And let me tell you, it was not an easy thing to do, but this is some secret sauce I'm gonna share with you. I went to every single realtor's office in my market. I literally knocked on the window and on the doors, and I asked them if they ever had any days during the week when they had meetings with their team. So I actually went in there and I started talking about, are you guys currently seeing relocating families that are looking for property to buy? Have you connected with anybody that is looking to rent property, but on a 1 to 2 month, 3 month basis? So I started to realize a lot of these opportunities were real estate investors actually were communicating with these people. And the cool thing about this is when you have a realtor that starts to see what you are actually seeing, not only is that able to help them make more sales, you're also able to connect yourself with their clients. So I'll give you an example of a company that I worked with. There was a realtor that I knew that was connected to somebody that worked at Frito-Lay. They were actually from a different part of California. They were moving to Central California, working at Frito-Lay, and they actually connected me with this gentleman. His name was Scott. And Scott had told me that he was from a place called Chula Vista. Vista, which is down south in California, and he was moving over to the Central Valley because of this job that he got offered at Frito-Lay here in the Central Valley. He wanted to actually try out to see if any of these properties or any of these areas were going to work for him. So the realtor had mentioned he's looking to buy a house, but he's not going to do it for about 3 months. Do you have any properties that he could stay in? That was a perfect example right there where I can now reach out to Frito-Lay, start connecting with these companies and start having deeper conversation. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's what actually helped me grow my midterm rental business, is by connecting with investors and realtors to see what they're actually seeing in the market. And you'd be surprised how many people are actually coming to even smaller cities to work on location for a certain amount of time. One of the other things that we just talked about this a minute ago is partnering with companies that actually need housing for their individual workers or contractors or whatnot. This is one of the best strategies that has been able to help me build my business and also a lot of my students, where there's local hospitals, and I'll give you Tenet as an example, is a local hospital in my market. I happen to connect with unmatched leads on Furnish Finder, and I noticed that there was a ton of clinicians that were heading to that hospital from a place called AMN Healthcare. A as in Apple, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy. Dang it, I've never been able to say that ever in my life. That's the first time I've ever been able to. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I now connected to that company and I said, hey, I see that there's Cindy is looking for housing. In fact, I happened to reach out to her and talk to her on the phone, and she gave me the recruiter's information, the recruiter's phone number. So I called the recruiter and I said, hey, Cindy's looking for housing. She's actually on location right now. She's staying at a crappy Airbnb. You already know this because you're her recruiter, and I know that she had talked to you about this. And what I realized is that a lot of these companies, they don't necessarily pay for housing. They give these travel clinicians stipend, but there are companies all across the US that are actually covering and paying the rent for those clinicians. And there's usually specialty doctors, occupational therapists, PTs, physical therapists, and there are tremendous amounts of opportunities if you happen to reach out to these companies. One of the other examples that I've talked about on a regular basis is actually connecting or driving by these extended stay hotels. And I know it sounds creepy, trust me, I know. I've heard many people who wrote in the comments that said, dude, you're weird, you're ambulance chasing, yada, yada, yada. And the reason why I do this is because I'll actually go look for a construction company that is staying at Extend Stay America or a Holiday Inn Express. And if you look at the prices of some of these places, there's individuals, and I'll give you an example of what I've actually seen, is companies will pay $200 a night, $150 a night to have one guy or one gal staying in one room. And a lot of times these companies will have 4 or 5 employees. So if you do the math on this, you have 5 employees that are staying at a Holiday Inn Express and they're paying $150 a night. What's the math on that actually? Shit, I don't know. Hey Siri, what is 150 times 5? 650? 750. Damn it. Suck at math. You guys didn't see that, okay? I did, oh my God, I'm not good at math. So they're paying $750 a night. Let's do a little bit more math here for the mathers that don't know how to math. I'm not good at math. Hey Siri, what is $750 a day times 30 equal in a month? Damn it, Siri, you're not smart. I'm not good at math. I'm gonna go to my calculator right now. All right, okay, that leads me to this freaking crazy. Companies are paying $2,200, $22,500. They're actually paying to have 5 individuals working on site and they're staying at a Holiday Inn Express. And we're just saying that's $150 a night. What if you're able to go to these companies and reach out to them and say, hey, I drove by the Holiday Inn Express and I happen to see a work truck that has plates from out of state or a different market. And the only reason why I'm calling you right now is because I actually own property, and my job at this moment is a company that I've built, and I now connect with companies just like yours to help save you guys money. How much are you guys paying right now for your lodging? And let them kind of start to discuss what they're actually doing, what their process is. I've heard a lot of people say that these companies want to spend money on lodging. They need to have write-offs. That's not actually true. A lot of companies, most companies will want to get the least amount of money that they can spend for lodging, because that allows these folks that work for these companies to have benefits. It allows these folks to have raises. It allows them to get bonuses. So don't be discouraged by having these conversations. If your goal is to save a company $22,500, imagine if you had a 5-bedroom house and you're able to house all these employees that were staying at a Holiday Inn Express. The 5-bedroom house has a 3-bath. 3 of those guys that are the 3 favorites that the company they work for are going to have their own bathroom. The other 2 are SOL. They're going to be in their own space without having to use the bathroom. I mean, they're going to have to share a bathroom with one of the guys. But if I was able to go to these companies and say, hey, I can save you guys $12,000, would you be interested in that? And I can rent my house now for $10,200 or $12,000. That's what we're doing. I'm seeing a lot of people doing this right now. So don't be afraid to reach out to these companies, connect with them, and think outside the box, because most people are stuck in this limited mindset where they don't believe things like this are even possible, when in fact they are, and they're happening on a regular basis all across the US. I have a ton of students who are making this happen right now, which leads me to this. If you're interested in joining a program, I have a program called AirVenture Academy, where I actually teach people specifically what I'm talking about right now, how to connect with these companies, how to look for them, what type of dialogue you should have with them, how to save them money, and ultimately how to sell yourself to these companies to make them want to use you so that you can make some extra bucks with your rentals. So if you want to learn more about this, I'm going to leave more in the show notes. I would love to have you in our program. We are freaking killing it right now. A ton of students are making things happen. And I'm not saying that because I have a program. I'm saying that because I truly believe in it and I'm watching people with success in this space. So if you want to learn more, links down below. Third way that I'm seeing the biggest opportunities right now in midterm rentals is probably not what you're thinking at all. It's actually by leveraging LinkedIn and Facebook. And this is where I'm seeing a lot of people build massive opportunities for themselves by connecting with people that work for these companies and agencies. This is another thing that I've been talking about for quite some time. I believe LinkedIn, you're starting to see a lot of influencers like Alex Hormozy, Pace Morby, Cody Sanchez. All of them have been using and utilizing places just like LinkedIn. So they're moving away from platforms like Instagram, platforms like X. And what I'm seeing right now is that a lot of these really smart business to business folks are now connecting and leveraging connections and relationships through LinkedIn. So I'll just give you another example. Let's just use Cindy as an example, who was a travel nurse that was connecting with a recruiter over at AMN. His name was Michael. I can now reach out to Michael at AMN because he's a recruiter. Guess what I can do on LinkedIn? I can go on LinkedIn, I can type in information, and I can say, hey, Michael, I happen to talk to Cindy, who is one of the folks that you are actually working with. She is a travel nurse, you're the recruiter. And if you open a conversation up with being able to connect one person to another, which Cindy is the nurse that I talked to off of Furnish Finder. She was looking for housing. She gave me Michael's information, who works for AMN Healthcare. Now I'm out there not only calling Michael, but I'm able to connect with him on LinkedIn, which is basically Facebook for business operators. So I can connect with him on there and say, hey, here's what I do. Here's how I've been able to operate. Here's the types of clients that I fix. And now I'm going to shut up and I'm going to ask him questions and learn about how his business works, how his travel nurses work, if there's any travel doctors that work with him. Are they paying for the housing? Are they covering costs? What are they actually doing? So you get to learn all this information about these companies that are in your backyard that you might not necessarily know, but you have to do a little bit of digging, a little bit of scouting, a little bit of information. Remember when I talked about earlier connecting with the real estate agents in your market, and maybe they have a person relocating from a job or company site and they're heading over to whatever market you're in. Well, now that gives you the opportunity to now go to that person, find out who they're working for, who's handling their housing, or who's actually in charge of whatever they're doing over there. And you get to reach out to them. And the best way to do that is to connect with them on LinkedIn. And I've watched not only myself, but many people in the space start to create real relationships by connecting on a business to business level. And I believe that is one of the game changers when it comes to actually building a successful midterm rental business, because keep in mind, everything that we're doing in the midterm rental space is all about connections. It's all about relationship. And it's totally different than Airbnb, right? You list your property, you have really beautiful pictures, you wait for somebody to scroll and say, oh my gosh, I like the way this place looks, I'm gonna book it. But with midterm rentals, you are totally actually building relationships, and that's what I love most. And trust me, you're probably thinking to yourself, I'm not an extrovert like you, Jesse. I don't just go out and talk to people all the time. I don't have a YouTube channel, blah, 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 making all the excuses that you wanna make. Trust me, I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert by nature, but I wanna build a business. And in order to build a business, you have to be a successful salesperson. I hate to break it to you, but you have to be able to communicate with some people. And if you're an introvert by nature, I get it, but you gotta make sure that you get out there and you feel comfortable actually communicating and selling something, because that at the end of the day is what allows you to outperform anybody else's by being able to sell a product. And selling actually comes from listening. And I'll talk about that in a totally different episode. But I believe LinkedIn, Facebook, even being able to go on certain platforms, like there's a bunch of marketplaces on Facebook that allows you to connect with different people, whether that's travel nurses, relocation for certain cities and certain markets. You can now build and connect with people on these platforms that have been around for a long time, but now you're being extremely intentional about who you're connecting with. And that's exactly how you start to build a business. And those are what I'm seeing as far as the super successful people in the midterm rental space that I'm talking to regularly. Those are the things they're putting together. That's what they're starting to think. They're being very intentional and they're making moves. So you're probably wondering, is it too late to start a midterm rental in 2024? And I'm here to tell you it is exactly not too late to get started in midterm rentals in 2024. In fact, I think right now is the perfect time to get started, to get into this space, to start educating yourself and to jump in head first, because I do believe this market is going to continue to grow. In fact, just like short-term rentals that are now an asset class, right? Just like apartments and commercial, I believe midterm rentals in the future will become an asset class just like short-term rentals. I believe there's so many people right now that are getting into the space because they're forced, because of regulations and things of that nature. But we know since the pandemic that a lot of folks and companies have pivoted into remote work or even different types of lodging. And we're seeing that right now so much. I'm seeing it multiple different ways. And as somebody that's been through regulations, I can tell you right now, if you do not have the mindset to pivot, or you don't start adapting the principles of what midterm rentals are, and if your city happens to ban short-term rentals, it's going to put you in a position that could not be favorable. In fact, I've been through it. It is not fun at all. And I can tell you right now, you don't want to go through that without understanding a different side of things. I believe midterm rentals are a lot easier to handle and a lot easier to navigate than short-term rentals, especially if you get hit with those regulations. One of the other things about midterm rentals is that they actually solve real world problems. We just talked about travel nurses that are heading to certain markets. That's pretty cool when you're able to actually help community members that are coming into your community and serving your family and folks in your specific community. Remote workers that are coming on assignment to do some jobs in that whatever specific market you're in. Construction workers that are going all over the place in the US right now. Those are really, really important things to think about, and you're actually creating a real need for these folks, and that is housing for 30 days at a time. If you've had any midterm rental experiences that are favorable for you, or maybe if you think I'm totally wrong with midterm rentals, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. I'm looking forward to continuing to talk about midterm rentals because I do see that there's such a massive opportunity. If you're not taking advantage of this right now, you're gonna be late to the game, and I would hope that you don't, but I hope you're glad you're here because I'm glad I'm making this video for you guys, and I'm telling you, hopefully you can go back to this in the future and be like, this guy was right. He was talking about midterm rentals for years, and all of a sudden, here they are. They're mainstream. So get in the game now. It's not too late. Get going. I just talked to you about some strategies that can be helpful. Again, thank you so much for being here. Like this, share this, get this out to other people, share with your brothers, uncles, neighbors, wife, because the more people that I'm able to get this in front of, the more people I can help. And most importantly, I love sharing information. So thank you so much for watching this. We'll see you in the next one.